Everyone, welcome back to the Retro Channel. This is part 2 of the Commodore 128 restoration, and in this part we're going to replace some electrolytics. We're also going to clean up the keyboard. Those new keys have arrived. If you haven't seen part 1, obviously be sure to check that out first. So yeah, I'll start by recapping the board. I've got some electrolytics ready to go, and I'm also going to change out some of these ceramic capacitors because they're a bit damaged from the crap that was going on around here. So let's get started. Get the desoldering station warmed up. I'll probably fast forward through this bit, but I'll run some funky beats underneath. So yeah, I'm gonna shut up and get to work. Now, if you haven't seen Jan Bater's video on his 128 restoration, be sure to check that out. Yeah, make sure you put the caps in the right way. Now I could see with this particular one, somebody's actually already replaced it, but they've used a really cheap one that's, I think it's usually available from JCar, which is a little hobbyist store in Australia, but yeah, they don't always sell the best electrolytic capacitors, but they're great for other stuff, so I won't bag them out too much. Just get better caps, damn it. The cap at C62 is a surface mount, 10 microfarad to 35 volt, but it's actually it's sitting in a through hole space. So I don't know if it's classic Commodore just going, oh, we've got a shitload of these lying around, let's just throw them in. 1035, I mean, I do have a surface mount replacement, because it does actually list that on the parts list for the 128, but what I also have is a through-hole cap, so I'm going to use that instead, just because I can. Maybe they couldn't find one short enough to fit under the can, I don't know, but I don't want to stuff around with surface mount things when the holes are already there. Right, so I've pretty much replaced all the electrolytics and quite a few of the ceramics in this area here because they were all pretty messed up. A couple of things to note: two of the electrolytics, this one here, which was a 10 microfarad 35 volt, it's actually a Nishikon. That was at C101, which yeah, it has leaked, and that's right next to the 7812 voltage regulator, so it may have got a bit hot, so definitely worth checking out those two caps there. And the other one was C80, which was, I think, this little guy over here. 2.2 microfarad 50 volt, also a Nishikon. Rated at 85 degrees. The one I've put in there is rated at 105. And if we look at this one, yeah, also rated at 85 degrees. And yeah, I've used 105s for pretty much everything. So yeah, it could be worth checking out those couple of caps, even if you don't want to go around recapping the whole thing. The other thing I might do while I'm here is obviously stick this bodge wire back down. Yeah, I'd hate it if it, got stuck on like one of these pins or something. And I didn't realize, that could create just a load of headaches. Hours of troubleshooting, I'd imagine. So I'd hate for that to happen to someone. I could only imagine how frustrating that would be, especially if you didn't realize what had happened. Oh. Right, feel a little bit better about that. The other thing I need to do is fix up. I lifted a pad here from the RF modulator from pulling it on and off so many times, so I do need to put a bodge in there so I can at least reconnect the RF modulator and test this out, make sure I didn't stuff anything else up. Yeah, the one that's supposed to be surface mounted, I did accidentally desolder that again, and then lifted the little pad from the bottom. Luckily, it's designed to be surface mounted, and there's not a trace coming from the bottom of it. Which one is it? That one. So yeah, not a big deal there, luckily. But yeah, be careful. Always be careful. Don't rush these things. Right, so the RF modulator now has little sockets installed. They're not the best, but it should save me damaging any more of the actual pads or the through holes. So put a little bodge wire in, and luckily that was all that was needed. So I guess we should fire this back up again and make sure it still works. Just something I noticed that was kind of interesting. After recapping, it seems to start up a lot faster. Listen for the switch. Now, I'm pretty certain before that it took a lot longer to actually boot up, but now it's like almost instant. So I don't know if that's sort of fixed up some of the voltages and got them more stable quicker after recapping, but yeah, just something of interest. I know it was definitely not that fast previous to recapping the board, so there you go. Alright, so everything still works, that's a good sign. I'm going to take off the cover for the cartridge port because it's also quite rusty around the edges, so let's get that off. I probably should add some fresh solder before we attempt to remove that, because I'm sure it's going to be a bastard to get flowing. Wow. And that didn't want to leave. Yeah, so we'll clean up that. Shut this up for now. Oh, while I'm here, ESD protectors for the joystick ports. If you haven't seen my previous video on these things, I'll try and link that up the top if I remember. But they're basically just little PCBs that sit around the joystick port just to protect them from any static discharge that you could accidentally kill the Commodore by touching the joystick port pins. So these are good to have. Protects your Commodore 64 or 128. Alright, so it came up pretty well. Yeah, most of the rust is all gone, and on the board as well, so let's stick this back in. Alright, it's better, I'm happy with that. Now, I did notice on some of these pins, some of them around the RAM chips, there is still a bit of corrosion going on, so I'm going to clean that off. It's not very exciting to watch, I don't think. Now, I don't think I'll put the can back over the video chips. I think I'll just heat sink them. I'm probably going to add a LumeFix 128 to the VIC-2 chip anyway. I think that's the only way we're going to really clean up those jail bars. Now, what else do we need to do here? I think this is pretty much done, at least for now, until we come back to the video. Just noticed some of the pins on the keyboard are bent. I actually haven't plugged the keyboard into this yet, so we should fix that up. That's the pedals. Okay, back to the case. Yes, it's quite yellowed. We are missing those keys, but good news. Look what just arrived. So, we can now restore this thing properly. The pound key is sort of yellowed on the top but white around the outside, whereas these are pretty much a nice sort of even coverage of yellow, but that's okay. We will get everything matching. So the keyboard will eventually, I don't want to put these in because I'm going to pull them out, but eventually the keyboard will look like this. And I've got to fix this shift lock key, which is pointing that way. So let's start on the keyboard, I guess. Okay, so given that I haven't decapped a Commodore 128 keyboard before, there are a couple of things to note. Obviously the space bar has a big long metal bar that runs across it, so just be careful with that when you're taking that off. But also, right, so these three keys also have metal bars that run underneath them. They're just tiny little ones. But yeah, be careful of those when you're taking out the three longer keys. The slightly shorter ones, like the restore key, don't have those, but yeah, these three do. So watch out when you're taking them out. I actually managed to pop the little inserts out, so I might put them back in just so I don't lose them. So yeah, be careful of that. Obviously you don't want to break any of these keycaps because they're not as easy to find as, say, a Commodore 64, and definitely not as cheap. Also the spacebar has different springs to everything else, so keep them aside. But apart from that, I can see that yeah, most of the springs have quite a bit of rust on them. There were one or two that were missing already. So yeah, I'll give them a soak in some WD-40 for sure. And the rest will get a clean up, and obviously a retro bright. I think this 128, I don't think it was used that much because there's not really that much dirt under here, but I think it was stored somewhere after it was sort of decommissioned, that yeah, it was subject to moisture and humidity, so that's why we've got rust forming. But it's okay, we'll clean it up. Right, so while the case gets a soak and a bit of a clean up, let's have a look at the keyboard. So I've already removed all the little screws and desoldered all the locking keys. It's pretty dirty. Yeah, this is, the metal is like, it's gone all sort of powdery. I don't want to lift this up because all the little plunges will fall out. So I'm just going to leave it like this, but we are going to have a little clean. That's interesting. There's a tiny little spring over here. Just take that out so I don't lose it. What's in here? Oh, that's just, it's a dirt hole where all the dirt goes. And so are they. Right, anyway, I'm going to give this a quick wipe down just to clean these contacts and obviously on the board as well. Beyond that, there's not really that much that I can do about this, or that much that I'm willing to do. So, yeah, might just leave it as is for the most part. Interesting, the springs that are getting a soak in WD-40 are like, it's gone all sort of almost like milky, off milky. That's pretty gross. Some reactions going on in there. Anyway, I'll clean this up and we'll take a look at the case. Just before I forget, here's our shift lock key that was sitting off to one side, and yeah, the actual casing's sort of broken around the outside of it, so when it's sitting normally it's straight, but because that casing is broken, it pushes it out to one side. So I might try and sort of glue that and sort of heat it back up to get it to get a good firm bond. But yeah, I'll let you know how I go. Alright, so here's our shift lock key. I just used a bit of super glue that'll hopefully hold it. Oh yes, it's got to go in from the front, unlike all the rest of the plungers which go in from the back. Alright, and I gave all these a clean and the PCB, so we should be good to put this back together. Which bloody way does it go? That way. Oh, and I better not forget the tiny spring which goes in there for some reason. There is a contact on the PCB, so I guess it's almost like it detects that the PCB is attached properly or something. I have no idea why that's there, but it's there, so we're going to make sure it goes back. Alright, so after many hours of scrubbing, cleaning, scrubbing again, retro brighting, we are ready to put everything back together. So may as well start with the keyboard first. They came out pretty well. Most of the keys are looking quite good. It's definitely an improvement either way, so I'm quite happy with that. So yeah, I guess there's not much left to do but put this all back together. I'm sure I'll probably make a mistake somewhere along the way that a keen-eyed viewer will no doubt pick up on and let me know, but let's fast forward this a little bit. Okay, now the thing that I was hinting at. If you look really carefully in the previous video and even in the beginning of this one, there is something odd about the key placements, particularly the up arrow that was originally on the keyboard. It actually wasn't an up arrow at all, and if you look carefully you can see that it doesn't sit right compared to all the other keycaps. Now, when I ordered the down arrow that I thought I needed, it made sense because that presumably was what was missing at first glance. But later on I've realized that what I've actually ended up with is two down arrows. The up arrow that was on the keyboard, which I think is this one, because this one looks slightly different from the rest, that's probably the one I ordered, was actually sitting like that. So that's actually a down arrow, and it occurred to me the moment I had all the keycaps off that this isn't right. And that's kind of annoying because I don't really want to order another key. So I'm thinking to try and make it look somewhat normal. Anyway, so the keycaps came out quite well. The spacebar is still yellowed. I think that was the most yellowed of everything. Some of the, oddly enough, some of the function keys are whiter than everything else. I don't know how that happened, but yeah. Still a huge improvement. Now, the case. The bottom case looking quite white and spiffy. Okay, so I've heat-sinked all the major chips with some extra heat sinks on the bigger ones. I'm pretty much out of heat sinks now, thanks to that. That's okay. I did also find some screws that should fit this case. They're not the original, and I'm sure people will freak out and go, "Oh my god, not the original screws." Probably the same people that freak out, you know, watching me throw RF shields away. So, whatever. Now, the top case. Here it is. Looking pretty damn sweet. As I said, that engraving is still there, and I don't know if the camera will pick it up, but if you look really closely you can see where that label was. But apart from that, I am more than happy. Yeah, here's what happened to my WD-40, by the way. It's it looks like iced coffee. That's nice. Now, before we forget, this UV protectant. May not actually protect it from UV, but well, not forever. But it does make it look nice, and gives me some peace of mind. I think that will do. This isn't perfect, but at least all the keys are there. I have to say it's kind of pretty. It's a proper keyboard, even though some things are in silly places, but it's a proper keyboard. Oh yes, and the power supply also got a retro bright as well. Still a little bit more yellowed, but it's not like a banana anymore, so that's also a nice touch. Alright, well I think that about wraps it up for this one. Big thanks to Mr. Lurch for the Commodore 128. It was quite a bit of work, but it was certainly worth it in the end. And obviously thank you for everyone for watching. We are going to revisit this one day to try out the Lumafix 128, see if we can clean up this video output. Apparently the VIC-2E does have some pretty rubbish video output, but we'll return to that in the future, along with some modulator replacements for the Commodore 64. I know Adrian Black recently did a video on a quick mod that you can do to them, so you should be sure to check that out. But I'm going to go the whole hog and try out a whole bunch of different options, so stay tuned for that. But I think for now we'll be looking at the Amiga 500, so that'll be coming up next. As always, thanks for watching. Leave me a comment, like, dislike, whatever you want to do. Share it around, and yeah, we'll see you again in the next one. Cheers. Yeah, who asked for this? Ah.